locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks.
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke loves wrestling.
And there is no one that does it better than
your host.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
The Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Welcome back to Duke Loves Wrestling. I am the Duke, and yes, I am the man of the hour, the man of the power, too sweet to be sour. And I'm joined by my illustrious co-host.
I'm not welcome. I don't feel welcome.
Why not?
Because you don't make me feel welcome.
Can we talk
You
about
have a bad attitude.
Can we talk about
Always.
your sweater? That's probably why I'm not impressed with you today.
No, because you're jealous of my sweater.
I own that sweater, and
I'm going to burn this sweater.
But my sweater is from a much more prestigious place.
Do you know what? Like the whole Nike thing with Kaepernick,
Yeah.
that would never drive me at any time. If Donald Trump endorsed Nike, it wouldn't drive me to burn it. The fact that you own this sweater, I burn this sweater.
You're gonna burn that sweater?
I'm gonna burn this sweater.
But I don't own that. I don't own that brand of the sweater.
It doesn't matter. If you own anything that looks like this, if there's ever a chance of us accidentally wearing the same sweater at the same time, burning it. Burning it. I want no association with you.
I would have worn that sweater today.
Yeah.
Your
brain's a few degrees off.
Yeah. On this week's edition of the Duke Loves Wrestling podcast.
And we're all out of time, folks.
Yeah,
it was nice for you to join us.
Stop it. Stop. What's wrong with you?
I want to get out of here today.
You strap yourself in, pal. You're in for a long one. We have two stellar interviews, my man.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't aware of this. Mm-hmm. And I know when you book interviews on this show, it's bad.
Yeah. You did a good job last week.
F&A right, I did a good job.
Bob Backlund.
Legend.
Did a very good job.
Legend.
Listen, everybody.
The highlight of your life.
That interview was covered by
everybody. The highlight
everybody.
of your life.
And can I tell you a story?
Personally and professionally.
Can I tell you a story?
You've peaked.
Listen, let me tell you folks how amazing the WWE is. Bob Backlund on this show was such a hot topic that on Sunday, the day of Hell in the Cell, the pay-per-view there, every major wrestling publication online was covering Bob Backlund on this show. Mm-hmm. And you know what the WWE did?
Ignored you?
They randomly posted a match between Bob Backlund and Magnificent Don Morocco.
Interesting.
So then I went and reverse Google. That was the last time they posted. This is the first time they posted anything Bob Backlund since he left the company.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence.
I want my money, McMahon. I'm driving content to your site.
Believe that?
Vince McMahon.
They undercut us. So in the Google
I
search,
blame
they
you.
got ahead of us on that.
Aren't you his buddy? Aren't you his friend? Aren't you an investor? All this baloney?
He outmaneuvered me on this.
Yeah,
What a
you've
maneuver.
been outmaneuvered. Driving a fucking bumper car and outmaneuver you.
So,
Jesus.
Shout out to the WWE. They saw that we were trending higher than they were, and they decided to pull a move.
You know, Vince McMahon is just jealous that we can get Bob Backlund and he can't.
It's true. It's true. I don't think Bob would want to talk to Vince McMahon right now, and if he did, it probably wouldn't be too good.
And you know what you you failed to mention?
What's that?
Was that I stood toe-to-toe and wrestled a WWE Legend Hall of Famer, and I held my own.
I don't know about you. You were screaming.
I got out of that cross-face chicken wing, and I reversed it on him. Now, the picture you've seen was only the beginning.
Oh, is that what it was?
It was at least 20, 30 minutes of a scrum.
Yeah.
And then Bob finally, he put the hand out.
We're going to put up a poll, folks. Who do you think would win in a battle between the Boston Bad Boy and WWE Hall of Famer Bob Backlund? Who would win in that match?
To be honest, I almost fainted when he looked at me.
You know, he was very scary.
Yeah.
Did you see when he was rubbing his hands when he was talking?
He's got those hands that you can just drive a nail in.
Yeah.
Just like he could just pound it in with his fist.
And when we were about to pose, he goes, "Small guys," and he grabbed real tight.
Well, yeah, so I want to talk about that, and my medical bills are gonna be coming in soon, and I'm forwarding them to you.
If you keep it up, I'm gonna bring Bob back here to
Here's what's gonna happen. Okay. So he said, let's do. I'm gonna put you in the chicken wing. And I said, Bob, you're a professional. I trust you.
There it is.
He puts me in the chicken wing.
Yep.
And he put me in the chicken wing.
He did. And
then he said, let's take the picture, and he goes, ah! And then I lost conscious. I blacked out just for a minute, and I came back. And I think because of that, I'm severely injured. But I hold you responsible because you signed off on this whole thing.
I told you don't play with me, okay? I told you what would happen. I'll bring my friends in here to straighten you up.
I just want to tell you something.
What?
As much as you say I've got friends in the business and I know Vince McMahon, you've never wrestled a professional wrestler, a WWE wrestler.
And
I have.
Never will.
And I have.
And
So
I
if
never
anyone
will.
wants to know who the real man in this room is,
Oh, yeah.
it's me.
Yeah.
You see these shoes?
Yeah.
You see
Yeah.
these
Look at
shoes?
those shoes. Yeah. Yeah.
I spent more money
Uh-huh.
on spilled milk last year
Yeah.
than you made.
Oh, good. Good for
Chocolate
you.
milk.
Chocolate milk, the best. What the heck is going on? Listen,
Got me all worked up.
we need to get on with this show. But before we get to any of that, Boston Bad Boy,
What?
you're always complaining. You're always complaining
Yeah.
about me not knowing what I'm talking about.
If you were sitting across from you right now, you'd be complaining too.
I don't know about that.
Just about anything.
If I was sitting across from me right now, I'd be very interested in what the other guy had to say.
And then you know what? You are so self-absorbed, I believe it.
That's true. That's very true. But anyway,
You don't know how to book guests for the show. That's what you were talking about. Go ahead.
no. Listen,
You're not
today,
good at it.
Today is the day, okay? I booked a couple of solid guests that are going to knock your socks off since you came up with the Bob Backlund thing last week.
I'd be.
know.
We'll wait and see how this goes.
Well, anyway, so listen, I went out and found a doctor, okay?
yeah, I hope you found a doctor. I hope it's a psychiatrist.
Well, they're going to work on you.
Yeah.
No, but I found a doctor who, she's a doctor by day, but she's a huge wrestling fan by night, okay?
Really?
So without further ado, let's bring on Dr. Trish. How are you, Dr. Trish?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am excellent. And Boston Bad Boy,
Yep.
control yourself. Look at it. See, here's what he does. As soon as he hears that somebody's important, he starts fixing himself up like
Yeah,
you
no, I'm
can see.
taking notes
She
because when
can't
they
see
sue
you.
us,
Yep.
when these people you bring on sue us for defamation or lie anything, I need to make sure I have my notes to then know that I was not guilty.
See that? I got no
And it was
support.
all you, Duke.
Thanks. So, Dr. Trish, let's start from the top here. You wrote
Yeah.
an impressive article about the Nature Boy Ric Flair and the documentary that ESPN did, that 30 for 30 that they did on him. Talk to us about that, because you took an alternative angle than most folks. Everybody was all pomp and circumstance and saying how great it was, but you didn't feel that way, did you?
I really liked it. I thought it was compelling. I actually thought it was so compelling that I named the article Ric Flair's 30 for 30, flawed yet compelling, kind of like him. I mean, he's very watchable, but I don't think there's any question that he's a flawed human being, just like the rest of us. But growing up back then, I'm not going to date myself, you really don't get to see the inside workings of why people want to be on stage. It's usually a very specific sort of person looking for a very specific sort of thing, love, admiration, respect, in varying degrees. And in his case, I just thought, I'd grown up with this character. He's always been around since I was a kid. There's always some Ric Flair reference or, my obsessive watching of wrestling. So I really wanted to see what kind of made him tick. I tuned in kind of just expecting it to be a regular documentary, and I felt like at the end of it, like, wow, I really had something for him that I had never had before. I felt a little sympathy for him. I just thought, my God, this poor man, he'd kind of been through everything, most of it self-inflicted, and now you're kind of sitting there with a box full of memories and a character that's really no longer. What do you do with that? How do you manage that, the weight of your own history on your shoulders? And if you take it off, you yourself will fall apart. And so that was the angle that I came from. And I mean, there was also some exploration into Charlotte, and I love her as a character. I think she's extremely talented. Duke knows that I am a Charlotte stan. I am all about the queen, and I just felt sad for her too. It was just this family that had been through so much, and you don't know if wrestling's actually helped or hurt them. And at the end of the documentary, you're still not actually sure.
Yeah, because it's still going. Their
still
lives are
going.
still going. Yeah, that's an
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
angle.
So that was the angle I took. I don't know. I think maybe I think about things a little too much because I am a sociologist, and my job is to actually drill down and try to understand motivations of why people behave the way that they do in a group. But being a wrestling fan, I can't say that it was objective, but it was the best 30 for 30 I'd seen.
Well, my take on wrestling is that it's just the evolution of the carnival folk, and when you see carnival folk, it's a sad thing. It's sort of you're dealing with people, I think, in a lot of cases that are starting out in the wrestling career. If they weren't fans, somewhat out of necessity, they were athletes in another way, and they think, well, I can make ends meet doing this. And there is that sort of tragic thread that runs through a lot of that. There's a sort of melancholy that runs through it, and it it's sort of like broken people in a way. And, and it's the entertainment industry, and it's a very raw vaudevillian entertainment industry that will chew you up and spit you out. And a lot of these guys went from having nothing to becoming megastars overnight, and the money, forget it. Recipe for disaster. And with a guy like Flair, he's sort of the archetype of that.
He really is. I think one of the things that I found particularly compelling was that you kind of see into the wrestling business how cruel it really is. I mean, I've always said that, I'll go with what you said and take it a step further. I've always said wrestling is the modern morality play. Less so now, but you've got a good character, a bad character. It's almost like those Greek amphitheaters of, yesteryear and way long ago. And they're acting this out right in front of you. It's the most emotionally honest, raw. I mean, have you seen a wrestling fan when they're into something?
I see Duke, and he frightens me.
Yeah,
he frightens me.
See me, I'm even worse. Okay,
I'm
look
taking
like
notes.
They're insane because they're so into it. The emotional crescendos are so high, and everybody knows that it's a work. Everybody knows that it's orchestrated, but they're so into it, and you're just like, something is a little off with this. But my God, isn't it fun? And what's off is the whole business, really. I mean, you got one major company that spits people out, chews them up and spits them out, kind of this revolving door or assembly line of wrestlers who work an insane schedule and put their bodies on the line for, what is between a 30-second or a 15-minute match where they have little to no protection and no medical care, nothing, and they do it because they love it, and we're just as insane for following it around. I've never seen loyalty like I have seen on a wrestling fan's face, with the possible exception of a Baptist church. I mean, there's a call, there's a response, there's a frenzy, there's a crescendo. You don't see that type of emotion in anything else on a consistent basis. And
it's funny.
And Ric Flair is absolutely the poster boy for that.
And Flair's whole bit is the Baptist preacher bit. It really is the extension of that, high flying, the money gospel kind of thing. I've spent more money on, spilt liquor, and if you follow me, you will be like me. And that's sort of that. I think in a way, but there is that darkness behind it. I think there is that darkness that, you peel back the onion a little bit, and what are the motivations for living that lifestyle? And that extends to a lot of other things that you said, but there is something so real, because these guys are just road dogs. They just go out there and they do it. And like you said, it chews them up and spits them out. And even now in this modern era, it's doing the same thing, which I find fascinating, that a publicly traded company gets away with it. And to treat its employees the way it does.
Hold on. Stop it right now. You guys aren't going to sit here and disrespect my good friend Vincent Kennedy McMahon's company.
Absolutely we are.
And a company that I'm a personal investor
in. No, you're not.
We're not going to go down this road.
No.
Doctor or no doctor, Dr. Trish. Yeah. We're not going to do that.
I see. You're orchestrating and creating controversy where none exists.
Okay? She's got your number, and thank God, because you know what?
I'm going to change my number.
I'm going to use her as an expert witness. I'm going to use her as an expert witness when I get out of this contract that I'm stuck in to not have to be your producer anymore.
No. Now, Dr. Trish, it's interesting because you run in a lot of different circles, right? Aren't you in a sorority?
I am in a sorority, and I will not say which sorority. Moving on.
We don't. But it speaks to a certain thing, because you study social groups and how people act in groups and what have you. You got a level with us here, Dr. Trish. Mm-hmm. You're a wrestling fan.
Yes.
And you know how the world looks at we wrestling fans.
Yeah, you're a bunch of mutants.
Stop it right now. How does the world look at Dr. Trish, at least the people who are part of other social groups that you belong to?
I think they think I'm a little strange. And I'll full disclosure, I'm an only child and care very little about what people think about me.
He's writing that down.
Let me just write this down. Only child. Okay.
Yeah, so that being said, I've always had the mantra of what other people think about me. And so I have always loved wrestling. I mean, I'm in international development, full disclosure, since we're putting down all my stats. I'm in international development. I've worked with the UN, many different agencies. I lived in Africa for years working on refugee aid, all kinds of things. And the one constant in my life has been wrestling from the time I was little. I mean, I grew up as a little girl in Brooklyn, in a middle-class neighborhood. Where would I have learned about Grenoble, France, except for Andre the Giant? Where would I have learned about Soviet Russia, all of these places, Glens Falls, New York? I think that's where Hacksaw Jim Duggan was from. I learned about geography from wrestling. I turn phrases still in like technical reports about, maternal health in Rwanda today. I actually used the phrase in the intervening time between X and Y. I got that phrase from Jim Cornette. You know what I mean? It's literally, it peppers everything that I do. And I saw it as an opportunity to learn more, learned a whole bunch of things about the human body from Gorilla Monsoon.
Things you might not want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when would I have known about a patella at 4 years old? I learned it watching wrestling. So I feel like wrestling is an example that everything is a learning opportunity if you're enthusiastic and you want to find it.
Wait, Trish, hold on. You're there's a lot of wind or something like that going on. What's going on your end?
An airplane just went by?
Are you moving?
No. Why would I be moving?
Are you in a rowboat? Are you in skydiving?
Are you moving the mic on your body? Is it possible it's brushing against you?
There's no microphone. I have the phone up to my ear like a normal person. Whose mic brushes their body? Really?
Well, Duke is a frightening person. He was making some hand gestures that I'm not going to describe.
Jesus.
I wallow in the
So in your real day to day, let me put it to you this way. I assume that Duke, he doesn't have a real life. He is, speaking of sort of like an only child mentality. Speaking of somebody who, if the character goes away, what is he left with? You're a professional. You have a real life.
Give me a break.
Do you go out there and evangelicalize, if that's a word, for wrestling the way Duke evangelize? Thank you. I've been stuck. See, my brain is mush after sitting in the same room with Duke.
Yeah, you're gonna be musher.
And do you feel like people are open to it when you talk about it? Because I know people shut Duke down right away. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Well, I'm coming at it from a different angle. I'm a sociologist, and I'm also a girl, and I look like exactly the opposite of somebody who would watch wrestling, the stereotypes. So I think people are initially fascinated. They always tell me, oh, did you know it was fake? So it was Game of Thrones. You watch that drivel. I can watch this. And then I explained to them about the modern morality play, kind of the hearkening back to the Greek theater, the good, the bad, these characters that kind of play on our worst hopes, our worst fears, and our most profound hopes. And I explain it in that way, and people sort of, oh, I get why you would watch it. But admittedly, these are people that know I'm a little odd anyway.
Any other odd behaviors we should know about, like to disclose, just in case people, ask us later on?
Stop it right now.
Who would ask you? I do talk to animals. That is true.
Okay, see? Perfect example.
Dr. Doolittle. Did you know that? Yeah. Did you know that?
Yeah, well, I'm keeping a list of notes here because Duke brings various people on this show with various amounts of success, and I will say that I'm a little frightened for you, Doc. I'm a little scared.
Oh, wow.
I can handle myself. I'm 5'10". I'm pretty sturdy. I'm good.
Speaking of which, if Randy Orton was standing right in front of us right now, what would you say to him?
Why did you do that to Jeff's ear? I almost puked.
Oh, there it is. That's
there it is.
Dr. Trish, if fans want to get in touch with you and read some of your amazing writings, because you've been published in Huffington Post and all these other places, you do work for the UN, you're all over the place. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, all of my writings are located on my website, which is TriciaHaynesWrites.com, and that's spelled TriciaHaynes, writes as in a person who writes.com. And you'll find articles about the UN, you'll find articles about politics, articles about wrestling, which will eventually springboard into my book, The Sociology of Wrestling, articles about pop culture, all kinds of things. Anything that suits my fancy and I'm interested in it, I write about it, and I find someone to publish it.
That's right. And before we let you go, can you promise to write a book about how terrible the Boston Bad Boy is?
Oh,
because
please.
I think, and you're the exact
I am unknowable.
person.
I am unknowable. And my motivations remain my own. Okay.
Is that what it is? Wow.
And my motivation.
I don't even know his name. I don't know much about him except that he's your adversary. So
no. I'm the normal one, and Duke is my adversary.
Oh, there it is. See that?
See, so he's got you all turned around.
Yeah.
I'm the normal one.
6 of one and half dozen of the other. Really?
No.
I mean, I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
You know what? I think it's time to end this conversation.
Dr. Trish, thank you for joining us on the Duke Loves Wrestling podcast. We appreciate you.
You're very welcome. Have a wonderful evening, gentlemen.
I don't think she liked you.
I don't think I care. You know why?
Why?
Because I don't care what wrestling fans think about me, because this is real life, baby.
Oh, yeah?
Okay? This is not wrestling.
You know, in real life, she will write an article about you that will ruin you. Ruin you. I get Bob Backlund to put you in the chicken wing. I get Dr. Tricia to write articles about you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna straighten
This
you
is
out.
what this is your master plan.
This is my
You need a
master
real
plan.
hobby. This is why it's a sickness with you.
I'm
You're
gonna
a sick
use
individual.
you to let punks like Micah Madrid and Roman Reigns know what happens when you mess with the Duke.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
All right. Can we move on with this show, please, now?
Listen, I'm not done yet. Okay?
Oh, you're done.
Because coming up, I'm bringing back my man who needs to explain himself from PWI 500. Okay? We're talking about Mr. Harry Burkett, and he's going to have to explain to me why that punk Kenny Omega is number one in the PWI 500. I'm not going to put up with it.
Somebody said something about fired up. This is Tommy Wildfire Rich coming to you live. You're listening to my man, Duke Loves Wrestling.
Hello, this is Harry.
Harry Burkett, how are you, Harry?
I'm doing great. I'm very grateful to talk to you again, Duke.
Hey, listen, it is a pleasure, although I feel a little upset that we're talking under these circumstances here. The latest edition of the PWI 500, this is the historic ranking of the top 500 pro wrestlers in the world. And, Harry, you had the audacity. And Boston Bad Boy, he told me not to say it this way, but I have to.
Because you're rude.
You had the audacity to rank Kenny Omega, of all people, the number one wrestler on the planet. Please explain yourself, Mr. Harry Burkett.
Now, wait a minute. I already knew that you didn't like Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me you don't like Kenny Omega either?
If I had to rank the two, I would say Roman Reigns is a F minus and Kenny Omega is an F. So the fact that you had Roman Reigns back in 2016 as number one, and now Omega in 2018. I just don't know what's going on in this magazine anymore.
Oh my goodness! So I've got to know, what do you have against Kenny Omega?
I think he's a flippy move, overrated punk.
Oh boy.
I don't really like his face too much either.
So Harry, he's got no evidence. He's got nothing to back up his claims. He just talks smack.
No. Omega, all he wants to do is these flippy moves, and God forbid. Okay, so finally the guy can wrestle for a half an hour, and suddenly he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Ric Flair used to do Broadways all the time. He wrestled for more than an hour, twice on Sundays. So Kenny Omega is nothing I haven't seen before, by the way.
Are you going to let Harry answer the question?
I'm sorry. But Harry, I'm very upset about this.
Well, to concede your point to a degree, Duke, I guess you're into logical storytelling in wrestling and in the ring.
You got that right.
Okay. Well, I suppose that the reason the 500, I guess the headline to take away from it, the number one placement is usually the headline. And it definitely is the fact that New Japan Pro Wrestling, one of their wrestlers placed at number one for the second consecutive year, Okada last year and Kenny Omega this year. So that really shows the momentum of New Japan and the momentum of WWE alternatives. And I think that's very exciting, especially when you consider that pretty good right now.
Well, it just makes me scratch my head because I don't necessarily know what Kenny Omega has. You're going to have to explain this to us here. What has he accomplished that has him ranked over Brock Lesnar, that has him ranked over the top wrestlers in the WWE, for instance? I mean, I just don't get it.
Well, I think Omega put himself in the mix about a year and a half ago with that first classic match against Okada, and he's kind of been hanging there as a potential number one for the past year and a half. And it's also a lot about timing. The fact that he won the IWGP title just of our evaluation period, that's was great for him because timing is everything with the 500. Like, take a guy like Jinder Mahal. I think Al Castle pointed this out in the magazine, that his title reign began like right before the end of the last evaluation period and ended in November, even though he had a pretty good year. You know, timing is everything.
Yeah, but come on, Harry. I mean, it almost seems, is Dave Meltzer working on your board? Does he have a vote or something like that?
Stop
because you know how in love he is with New Japan Pro Wrestling. It just seems like there's something amiss going on over there.
Well, I think he gave Omega's last match about 7.5 stars.
Disgusting.
So, Harry, I have a couple of questions just on the back end side of it. You mentioned that the New Japan guys have been at the top of the list for a while. Do you think this signals some kind of a change in the wind where the WWE is falling off the pace with the talent they've got these days?
I don't think so. And I think that's what's so wonderful about this era. I mean, when you consider the great things going on with WWE, the Raw roster, SmackDown moving to Fox next year, the Women's Evolution pay-per-view, NXT. NXT obviously gets rave reviews. I think it's just an expanding world where there's just room for all of it. I really do.
Well, I know that, like, for instance, the WWE Hall of Fame is a joke, and Vince McMahon just decide who gets in and who gets out. And I know that the PWI 500, going all the way back to 91, you guys work on this. How does it work? How does the system really work? What is the editing process to come to, how many people are involved getting it together and sorting through and making the decisions?
Right. So wait a minute, you're telling me you don't like James Dudley, Vince McMahon's driver, being in the Hall of Fame?
Listen, I'm not commenting on anything specific, but I'm just saying we all know what's going on with that.
Yeah, how many bumps did James? Well, you know what? James Dudley could have taken a couple of bumps. We never know.
Maybe he's the father of the Dudleys.
That too.
Well, it's a very deliberate process. It'll start off usually with a conference call or a go-to-meeting session with all the top writers at the magazine. And, of course, Stu Sachs, the publisher, he runs the meeting. I would say that Dan Murphy and Al Castle are pretty influential. They're very sharp. They try to keep up with the indie scene. And then we have other contributors like Kevin McElvaney, Brady Hicks, Mike Bessler, other people who contribute to the magazine. And usually it'll start out with a very long email thread, and then we'll have the meeting, and then we'll fine-tune it through more emails. And then this process goes on for about 2 or 3 weeks. And as far as the actual writing, each of the writers are assigned roughly between 40 and 50 bios to write. I think I did 50 through 100 this year.
Wow.
And Murphy writes most of them. And I know when I did it years ago, I used to write on average about 350 bios. And, I remember our editor, Brandy Mankiewicz, she would just FedEx just these stacks of binders and folders that I was going through. And I was pretty much operating in the dark and going by the rankings that she sent me.
Sure.
Nowadays, I know Dan keeps going back to the videotape, going on YouTube and watching people's matches. And it is just very important for us to get it right. And I think history shows, other than Duke, most people with our picks. I think if anybody has a gripe, it's usually individual promotions when they feel like their wrestlers aren't represented properly in the 500. Like maybe we ignored Northeast Wrestling this year, and maybe a lot of their people are farther down than they should be. It's more that than criticism for number one.
Now, are you aware of any time, because I know how crooked Vince McMahon is, has he tried to slip some money towards anybody to make sure that his people are highly ranked? Because I know he's not above that. And I know that a guy like Duke will back him to the hilt. I think that's wrong. And I know that your publication has journalistic integrity, but I just want to make sure. Do you have any stories about Vince, coming to your offices or mailing you checks or anything like that?
Well, not really. I suppose if Vince McMahon wanted to, he could lay a couple million on the table and just he could control all 500.
Right, exactly. And one last thing, just sort of on the mechanics of it, and it's something we talk a lot about on this show, is the changing landscape since I think 91. Right, you've been doing this list.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you feel the landscape of wrestling has changed? You think it's gotten better? You think it's gotten worse, sort of overall, and what the talent's like, as we've come from the early 90s to now? Because I know, like, again, Duke is very critical of certain styles of wrestling. I know a lot of the old timers are as well. And what do you think? I mean, you sit with us, you write all these bios, you put these lists together with all these top writers. What do you see it like?
Well, I would, and Duke knows this. I'm very partial to 1980s NWA and the classic wrestling. But I have to say, right now, the period we're living in is the most exciting time. It's the most expansive that the industry has ever been in. Because if you look back to 1991, the early 1990s, we were really in the doldrums. It was the WWE steroid scandal, Vince McMahon on trial, WCW. This was before Ted Turner, Eric Bischoff took it to a new level. And then the other kind of glory period of the past 28 years during the 500 was the Monday Night War. But again, that was almost a war of attrition where you knew or assumed there was going to be a winner and a loser. And that's how it ended up, that WWE took it all and WCW and ECW went out of business. So even that had a definite downside. What we're seeing now is an ever-growing pie thanks to social media, the internet, and the whole globalization of pro wrestling. So I think right now definitely is the best time. I probably wouldn't have given that answer 5 years ago, but just the events that have taken place and All In and the Young Bucks, Ring of Honor, the whole movement, I think now is the most exciting time.
What do you think the influence of the expansion of female wrestling on the bigger stage, like in the WWE, how is that affecting the quality of the product that you're seeing today?
Well, I know from my point of view, well, as a writer, I remember my first 15 years at PWI. About every 2 or 3 years, we'd run the obligatory feature, Is Women's Wrestling Dead? Does women's wrestling have a chance? And really, it was such a sad state. And, you had Medusa and you had, glimmers of hope, but you never had more than 1, 2 to 3 stars in the U.S. that were noteworthy. And then you had the golden age, Trish Stratus, Lita, and I thought that was going to be the peak for a long time. But when I watch wrestling now, I really like the women more as far as the pacing of the matches and the psychology of it. You don't get any better than Alexa Bliss when it comes to expressions, ring psychology, and the direct impact that it's had on our magazine is the next issue. We're not doing the female 50 this year. We're doing the women's 100.
Woo! That's right.
And, it seems like the audience really wants this female wrestling aspect. And do you think it's been handled well? I mean, again, we've talked about it where the WWE, just because they're the biggest fish in the pond, have done they've put their foot in their mouth on a lot of issues surrounding how they're handling women as wrestlers. I mean, do you think anyone's going to get a hold on this anytime soon? You mentioned sort of the ever-growing pie, and it's sort of the rising tide is lifting all boats here, but they seem to keep stumbling and stumbling and stumbling on this women's issue, the Saudi Arabia thing, and they're still holding it like, someone's holding a crying baby going, I don't know what to do, but I need to do something,
Well, I think that's all of culture right now with the Me Too movement. It's definitely not limited to wrestling.
Sure.
I mean, obviously a driving force behind this is Stephanie McMahon, and she wants women to be represented as strong, positive role models. And if they have to be a villain, they got to be a strong villain.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a minefield. And I'm a little surprised that wrestling has been, or WWE in particular, has been immune to it as much as it has. Mm. So I don't know. I guess I'm more concerned with the simple mechanics of things like the Becky Lynch forced heel turn.
Oh, boy.
The bigger issues like that.
How ridiculous is that? I mean, here you have a wrestler who the fans are behind and support so much. They want to see this young lady succeed. and the WWE is trying to force us to boo her, and it's just not working. The fans don't want to boo her.
Well, as a journalist, you just asked me the mechanics of the 500, how we put it together. As a writer, I would like to know more about the inside baseball of WWE.
Right.
I have a feeling that there's a lot more, far more factors going into these kinds of things than before. Like how much merchandising plays into this. Like, do they have a deal, a huge deal for Charlotte, of things coming out down the road? I think there's a lot of corporate considerations to what they're doing.
A lot of focus groups.
Yeah. In the old days, Vince Russo on a Tuesday afternoon meeting could say, okay, we're going to turn Kane babyface tonight. And bam, it could be done like that. And, Eric Bischoff has told the story that he doesn't know whether it had been so easy to turn Hogan heel back in 1996, current conditions. WCW might have been more tempted to gut it through like WWE has with John Cena and now Roman Reigns. It's hard to change course with the top stars now because there's so much money involved and fear of losing money.
Mm-hmm.
Merchandising, marketing, I think there's a lot of suits and ties, lots of executives and deals with Mattel and that sort of stuff that goes into it.
Right. A
lot more than it used to.
Yeah, it's like, we've got all these Hogan in the orange or in the yellow shirt. We can't start. We have 10 million of these left to sell. We can't turn him heel just yet. We got to make sure we sell all that and get the T-shirts out before we do it. And like you said, then then there's 300 people making the decision on whether or not that fits the storyline or whether or not the fans are ready for that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The fans definitely have an influence, and you see that. But in some of these cases, Roman Reigns and the Becky Lynch heel turn, and now what they're doing, Braun Strowman, it seems like so many of these things are predetermined so far in advance, or they just have this feeling we can muscle through this.
Sure. We had Bob Backlund on the show last week, and I know you're a fan of his. And so he told this great story about his famous sort of heel turn. And he was saying to Vince, it's not right. This is not me. This is not me. This is not my personality. And then he came with this great idea thinking, well, you know what? You know how I'll turn heel? I'll just double down on the nice guy routine, the howdy doody stuff. And it was a brilliant turn, and it was the right thing to do. It wasn't a forced turn, and so it worked.
Right. Well, I have a couple stories about that. I remember when Bob Backlund was defeated by the Iron Sheik, and Hulk Hogan was the new champion.
Mm-hmm.
There was a period of 2 to 3 months that Backlund was still in the WWF. And I think it was Dan Shockett, in his column in Inside Wrestling back then, that said Backlund was like a stray dog begging for scraps. He didn't have a role in the WWF anymore. I remember at that time, Sports Illustrated ran the first big pro wrestling story in the mainstream. You may remember the cover, Hulk Hogan on the cover, and the headline was Hulk Hogan, wrestling's top banana. Holding a banana or something. Anyway, there was a story in there at the time that Vince McMahon Jr. had tried to persuade Backlund into dyeing his hair black and adopt a heel persona way back in 1984. And fast forward to Backlund's heel turn in 94. I was present when he turned on Bret Hart.
That's cool.
And in Ocean City, Maryland, I live pretty close to Ocean City. That's my home. And it was at the convention center, and it was one of those marathon television tapings. And there was a match between Bret Hart and Bob Backlund that was aired on TV. And that was the match where Backlund snapped. And he clamped the chicken wing on Bret and wouldn't let go. And so that whole angle was finished. And the next match began, some sort of TV match. And I noticed Backlund walking in the rafters at the very top above all the fans. I didn't notice where any other fans noticed him up there. He had his robe on. He was just walking, and he sat down in the far corner, way up high. And he just sat there and looked at his hands. And that really has always stuck with me. It was almost as if he was still struggling with the heel turn that had just taken place just a half hour before.
Wow.
Had needed a moment to contemplate the whole situation.
That's pretty amazing because he really got into detail about, again, the two times that he was approached to do it, and the second time, obviously, he did. But his big concern was, what is my daughter going to tell her friends at school that daddy's now a bad guy? And so that ties right into what you observed, that this really was something for him. This wasn't acting to him. This was his life's work. And to change course so abruptly for, quote unquote, the business, I think it kicked him pretty hard.
You've heard this time and again, like Backlund, John Cena with the whole Make-A-Wish Foundation, and that, he doesn't want a complete image makeover.
Mm-hmm.
We always wanted him to turn heel, but he had other considerations. Same with Backlund. I mean, he was a hero to aspiring amateur wrestlers. He made lots of trips to high schools throughout the Northeast. He would go to the amateur wrestling tournaments and present the trophies and things of that nature. He ran for political office. So I think he's a person who's always been concerned about his image. And you've heard the story with, you may recall Owen Hart just before his death, that he was being put to angles like a love triangle with Jeff Jarrett and Deborah, and his wife talked about how that was embarrassing to him, that, Owen Hart, that's his real name, that's his real image. And wrestlers don't struggle with that to the degree they used to, but it's still out there.
Well, with kayfabe dying, that has made a lot of that stuff die with it there. That's the truth there. Wow. Harry, you went all over the place. You went from that punk Kenny Omega to talking about the background of Bob Backlund.
I'm glad someone came on this show and actually had something valuable to say.
It's been right
you just spew nonsense all day.
Cut it out right now. Harry, if fans want to get in touch with you personally, what's the best way that they can reach you?
Probably on Twitter. I'm at Harry Burkett 1 on Twitter, and that's how we make contact, Duke. That's usually the best way to reach me.
That's right. And what about the PWI 500? If they want to get a copy of this historic edition, other than the almanac, I mean, this is really the big time here. And also, the women's 100 is going to be coming out. Where can they get the PWI 500?
Well, it's already available digitally. It's been out for at least a month. You can go to our website, pwi-online.com. And you can click on the link, and you'll find out how to purchase a copy. I believe a digital copy these days is only about $3.99 or $4.99. Subscribers to the print version are just starting to receive those now, and they'll be on newsstands everywhere probably within a week or two.
Perfect. Because, I've been going to my local CVS. Harry, I want to have it in my hands. Okay, I'm not going to do this digital nonsense here. I want to have this thing in my hands. I've been going to CVS every weekend here, and it's not there. Okay? I want to be able to look Kenny Omega in his face on this magazine and crumple it up. Draw a mustache.
You have
on him.
problems.
Listen,
you have problems.
I do. Harry Burkett, it's always a pleasure hearing from you. I love PWI. I grew up with PWI. I got my information about what was going on in the world of professional wrestling from the whole series of wrestling magazines that you guys put out. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you, Harry. You're like a member of the family, and you definitely have to come back again soon.
All right, thank you very much. I always enjoy talking to you.
Hey, this is the Duke of Dorchester, the one, the only, the man of the hour. Yeah, can you handle that, baby? I want to tell you this. You've been listening to Duke Loves Wrestling.
That was an awesome interview there, huh?
Well, you know what? Once in a while, a stuck clock is right twice a day. You know what I mean? And so maybe you've had yours for the month or something.
I'm bringing a heavyweight like Harry Burkett.
I don't know.
Dr. Tricia. I mean,
I'm glad I was able to make you up your game a little bit because you are a slacker.
Wow.
So,
whatever there, Boston bad boy. Listen, folks, if you've seen me this past week, you notice I've been a little off. And Boston Bad Boy will have you believe that that's normal. It's not.
Well,
it's not. I'm always on my game, unless I'm not on my game. That's right. But I'm going to make an announcement here, and I haven't really said too much to too many people about it, but I found out last Saturday that my Grandma Pearline had passed away. And, in fact, tomorrow and on Saturday we'll be doing the wake and funeral services there. So really challenging time for the family. Grandma Pearline, originally from Jamaica, great woman.
I love that name.
Yeah, awesome name, Pearline. And it's funny because well respected by everyone from the random person in the neighborhood who she fed to the mayor of Boston.
Yeah,
who mentioned her during his acceptance speech when he became mayor.
That's great.
How crazy is that?
That is pretty cool.
You know what I mean? Because she met him one day when he was running for state rep, and he said he needed her help, and they talked, and she says, well, if I help you, are you going to remember me? And he said, you help me, I'll never forget you. And the man never forgot it. Through the years, they developed a relationship that was just tremendous. And that's just one mini story of a lady's amazing life.
I'm very interested in, you mentioned food.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in the cuisine of Jamaica. And as we all know, grandmothers are the best cooks.
Of course.
So what's the specialty dish here? When you're getting something, when she says, "Oh, look at you.
Yeah.
You look hungry.
Yeah.
Eat something."
Well, I mean, Grandma could make everything, but I got an aunt. Auntie Yvonne makes the best.
Really?
Yeah, she was.
So she took it to the next level.
She took it to the next level. She made the best coconut rice and peas and curry goat.
I'm so hungry. You do this to me.
I do, and you can't think about family without thinking about food because it goes.
It's intertwined.
It's intertwined. It really is. And I got a funny story.
All right.
And this is a story that will stay with me forever. Grandma is fresh from Jamaica, right? And she makes friends. She's living in New Jersey. She makes friends. And some guy at the bar, she's hanging out at a bar with a bunch of guys, right?
Hey, you know what?
It became her friends. They looked out for her, right?
Sure.
So she knew the bartender because Grandma could drink anybody on the table. She's amazing. The woman could handle herself. But some guy's trying to sweet talk her, and he keeps ordering her screwdrivers, which is orange juice, either gin or
right, or vodka. Something clear.
Sure, something clear. So he orders the drinks, and she tells the bartender, take the money, but make sure you only put orange juice in mine. The guy doesn't know this.
Yeah, so she's made arrangements.
He keeps ordering her screwdrivers, trying to get her drunk.
Well, there you go.
And
getting himself drunk, I would assume.
Well, that's the best part. He ended up having to be carried out of the place because he was so wasted, and he couldn't understand what the hell was going on with Grandma.
That's funny.
Everyone laughed because she was always a step ahead.
Well, that's what I say. You can't pull anything.
No. Grandma was always a step ahead. And, it's funny because even in her later years when doctors had counted her out and kept telling us, she's not going to make it, she was always a step ahead. She hung in there. Jeez, at least for the past decade, which is impressive when you think about they counted you out for 10 years at least, and you are still here.
Yeah.
So just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, Grandma, I love you, miss you, and you will never be forgotten. And that's really it.
I think this show, dedicated to Grandma.
There is dedicated to Grandma Pearline. And with that said, take it away, Tony Schiavone.
Mr. Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Wrestling.